mindfulness is not about fixing things. Although there's a discernment, you can see what causes suffering and what brings well-being. So that's part of it. There's a mindful response, it's called. But to start with, it's simply seeing with kindly eyes and a gracious heart, with loving awareness, and stepping back. Because there's so much drama in our bodies, our emotions, our hearts, our minds, and then in all those other humans around us. And so this is the invitation. So what I think I'll do now is do some teaching for a bit, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and try to include some of the topics that you raised. And then we'll do some dialogue. How's that sound? We are in a time of great change. Now, I hate to say this to you, but we're always in a time of great change. Sometimes it's a little more apparent, but quite honestly, that's called human life. It is. I mean, think about your life. You were this infant and you were this teenager, God spare you, you know, and you're this whatever, young adult. Your life has changed so much. Everything around you has changed so much, and the world in change. And then we have the political world, since this class is happening in the United States of America, as it is. And of course, there's always political change. But part of what makes politics the way that it is that it is an exercise in scaring people. Much of politics is really about raising the fears and touching those primitive parts of our brain that said somebody else, the others are going to get you. You have to be afraid, you know, and then out of that fear, fueling whatever it is, divisiveness, racism, class distinctions, all the things that help bring up the fear, right? So you'll vote for me to keep you safe. And that's on all sides. It is. And then here, which is the topics you brought up, big surprise, we carry it in our body. There's fear, there's anger, there's all the alarm about what might happen in the next administration. For those of you who didn't vote as a loyal Republican, but had some other view. But even if you did, it's like, holy caroli, what is going to be happening? It looks like these changes. So we're sitting in a field of cultural anxiety. And just as we meditated and noticed the state of our body, heart, and mind, these are part of it. And the question I didn't ask as you were getting quiet and feeling your body or your heart or your mind, which I could have because you have a deep channel of intuition, is what does your heart want you to understand? What does your body want you to remember or pay attention to? What does your mind want you to know? They all have lessons for you, things that invite your deeper attention. But here we are, in the midst of cultural anxiety, divisiveness, and all the kinds of huge changes around us. One possibility is that we fixate on the fear, the anger, the grief, the loss, the angst. That these are things that were mentioned. The darkness of the season outwardly mirrored in consciousness. And we certainly need to honor it. We need to bow to the grief and weep our tears. We need to be able to acknowledge the anger and the fear. And do you know why you're angry? And why you're afraid? Because you care. You could focus on the anger. It's a natural emotion. It has its place and its use. But you get angry because you care. You get afraid because you care. And so here we are sitting in the Dharma Center, invited to take a bigger and deeper and wiser perspective than the one that's sold to you on your devices. There's another possibility. And this comes in the first lines of a whole series of sutras or texts from the Buddhist tradition, which begin with the words, "O nobly born, remember who you really are. Remember your original dignity, your freedom of heart, no matter what happens. Remember your Buddha nature. Remember that you are consciousness, loving awareness itself, having a hide and seek game with incarnation here. But who you are is the Buddha, is the awakened one. And so then you can steady your heart, not because all these things aren't present, but because you become big enough to hold them with the great heart of compassion and the eyes of wisdom. I did a little thought experiment. I imagined going to see my teacher Ajahn Chah and saying, wow, the election results, the conflict, the things in the US and globally, the wars, all these things happening. What do you have to say? And he would pause, gaze very kindly and say, anicca, which means it's impermanent, isn't it? You thought it was going to be one way and then it was, and then it changed. This is the truth, that it's all impermanent. And it goes from blue to red and back and forth. He'd look, he'd say, is that a surprise? And then he'd say, oh, dukkha. There is suffering in life. You've noticed it, haven't you? And he'd look kindly and he'd say, how do you live with anicca, with impermanence? Things not being what you want sometimes. How do you live with dukkha? Because they're not a mistake. They're the way things are. In his monastery, during the time I lived there in the Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos war, there would be fighter jets and bombers flying overhead. His monastery was a place of peace. He said, the wars come, they're terrible. They go, we want to show that there's another way of being. So that you don't take the war into your heart, but you remind yourself and people who we really are. I imagine talking with the Dalai Lama. And he'd look at us and say, oh, your election. And his eyes would tear up because he's so compassionate. And then he would say, yeah, me too. We've had some very hard times. And then he'd laugh and he'd say, yeah, we'd get through it. To steady your heart. Now, what helps with anxiety and all these emotions? It helps to name them like we did and say, thank you for trying to help and protect me, so you're not squashing them. You can also notice the stories they tell. Some of them are dire stories. That's Mark Twain saying, my life has been filled with terrible misfortunes, most of which never happened, right? Because we don't know actually. So you feel the emotions, you see the stories, and you name them. This is grief. Grief is like this, and you weep. And this is fear. And then you notice the care underneath, that who you are is bigger than those feelings and stories. They're there. You actually are the caring one. You become the loving witness. You ground yourself on the earth instead of being lost in all kinds of reactivity. Do that which grounds you. Garden, feel yourself seated on the earth. Do what connects you with Mother Earth, who's seen everything. Put your hand in your heart sometimes and feel the care. But actually, you're a very sensitive being and you care. And you can go through this life with caring. And also know that you're not alone in this. Chinese Chan Master Sheng Yen says, those who do not have faith in others will not be able to stand on their own. Those who are suspicious will always be lonely. Someone asked about community. The truth is that we are in community, and we just need to open our eyes and hearts to feel it. It's our brothers and our sisters. And then I love this. It's not a poem, although it is to me, from Bill Njidi, who is a Aboriginal stockman, songman from Australia. Stories about feelings. He says, I'll tell you a story. Listen carefully. This, you can hear me. I'm telling you because Earth, just like mother and father or brother to you. That tree, same thing. Your body, my body, I suppose. I'm same as you, anyone. Tree, working when you sleeping and dream. That star, he working there. See? He working, I can see. Always at night. If you lie down, look careful. He working, you see. When you sleep, blood he pumping. So you look, he go pink, he come white. See him work, he work. In the night you dream, lay down. That star he working for you. Tree, grass, working for you. Kind of takes my breath away. Yes, it's indigenous wisdom and the deep wisdom. It is true. Any kind of science, any kind of consciousness you have, that tree is breathing with you and turning your carbon dioxide breath back into oxygen. They're all working for you, and you work for them. You are in community. You are not alone. That's a fiction. The whole sense of separateness. There's a bigger perspective. And when you remember this, you also know how you can respond, even though there will be grief and fear and loss and angst and all these things, and, all the dire problems, which aren't quite here yet, but they may come. Then we need to respond But underneath it all, another deep truth. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is the ancient and eternal law. That's the verse from the beginning of the Dhammapada, 2,600 years ago. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. That's what the earth is calling for, because it's us, it's our family. So you quiet the mind, you walk in nature, you take tea yourself or with a friend. You feel the trees working for you and the stars carrying you, which they are. Our star is always carrying you with its light, and the moonlight reflected from our star. And you have a big perspective. The Ojibwa have a saying, sometimes I go about pitying myself when all the while I'm being carried by great winds across the sky. We don't know about what's going to happen. Do you think, some of you, that this election is a big deal? And it may be. I worry for my friends who don't have papers, who are undocumented. I worry for my trans friends. I also worry for my Republican friends. Believe me, there's suffering aplenty to go around and delusion aplenty to go around. There's a woman that I know who made, or know of, who made a work of all art in Colorado called the Salt Monument. She made this beautiful temple out of wood, cedar and other beautiful woods. And in the center of it is a lucite, like glass or plastic crystal, that's about 8 feet high, shaped like a crystal, filled with 8.5 billion grains of salt, one for each human being on this planet. And as the pujari, is the goddess who cares for the temple, every morning she goes in and pours out 200,000 grains of salt for the 200,000 people that died that past day. 200,000 gone. And then in another part of the day, she pours in a cup with 250,000 grains of salt for all the new babies that got born. You know, that's what we are on this planet. We reproduce ourselves, dying and being born by the hundreds of thousands and millions, including guess who? Moi, Miss Piggy would say. Perhaps so. But from the vastness, the Tao, do you think the election is a big deal? How about climate change? And the election ain't going to make a big difference about it. It'll make some, but it's something more enormous. How about artificial intelligence? It may be a lot bigger than this past election. How about the new forms of nuclear fusion and power that might give power to all kinds of things without any pollution, and that are coming right down the road? Huge things are happening. On one side, divisiveness and huge change. And it's not just elections or politics. It's who we are. And the wisdom of the Buddha, which is you, is to step back, to see the turning of the seasons with a sense of vast perspective, and to realize that we are in what Joanna Macy called the great turning right now culturally, which is that human beings are called to shift from capitalist, exploitive, greed-based get all that you can global culture to a culture of interdependence, where we see that our breaths and the oceans and the mountains, they're all breathing and moving and living with us and all creatures, and we can't separate ourselves. So what do you do in the great turning? You become the bodhisattva, the being who sees with eyes of kindness and actually turns to what is difficult. We tend to focus on that so much, but you turn to what is difficult, not so much to say, woe is me, but the bodhisattva says, oh, good, I have an assignment. I'm here. Let me do my part. Let me see what I can add. Because just as you can remember the terrible things that have happened, you can also remember the bodhisattvas who are your ancestors in every generation for thousands of generations, who not only survived, but brought beautiful things into the world in the midst of it all, in the midst of wars and pandemics and famines, and they're bodhisattvas, and they changed us. Howard Zinn, to be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. When we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning globe into a direction of blessing and benefit. Yes, you get quiet. Yes, you weep. Yes, you hold your fears and your confusion with loving kindness, and know that you're bigger than this and wiser. The human race tends to remember the abuses to which it has been subjected rather than the endearments. What's left of kisses? Wounds, however, leave scars. But there were so many more kisses. And so the bodhisattva turns, wherever you are, there'll be a place to reach your hand, to mend something that's torn, to offer comfort, whether it's economic or political, or raising a child and building a garden and showing a different way of being. The earth doesn't need, and we don't need, guilt and anger and fear so much. Really, the transformation and the great turning is to see with the eyes of love, to live that way, to encourage others, to reach out as the bodhisattva where you are. You're in the perfect place. This is your assignment. Central casting gave you this body and this assignment. Do something cool with it. You can, you know. All right, I'll pause. I hope I touched on some of these themes. Love and trust. Now control, things are impermanent. Oh gosh, big surprise. Renewal, compassion. So questions, please raise your hand, or maybe if you're online, you raise your little, Zoom hand.
Hello, thank you for your teaching. All right, this is very counterintuitive.
Perfect.
So as you were speaking, I was grappling with something that I often grapple with surrounding Buddhism and meditation, which is this idea that we that how do I say this? There's a that the ego is an illusion and not something to be clung to, and therefore I feel like the logical conclusion of that is a type of um maybe a passivity or a lack of advocacy. So in the collective, it's like, do we take a position? Do we take a side that we think is right? Or is that all ego? And on the personal level, like I've found at times when I've been mistreated, I've tried to use that as an opportunity to let go of my ego. And that has not felt healthy for me. So I don't know how to reconcile this idea of releasing our ego with living in a real world with a body, with limitations, with the need for boundaries, with the need for self protection to be healthy, with perhaps a need to advocate for those who are um, suffering in certain ways. So, could you help me?
Sure. I love your question because it's one that's there for a lot of people. And you'll notice if you keep looking at me, okay, you can whatever what you like, that I don't use the word ego. But you read that in some Buddhist book, right? Is that correct?
I don't know. It's just like a part of the meditations and teachings, right? Like,
Yeah, you've been reading. Throw those books away. Forget that stuff. Okay. Because what you'll find is that the truth is that, things can be emphasized. And in one place, there's the emphasis on non-attachment, which in its most healthy form is just not clinging to things so much. But when I was speaking tonight, I actually was speaking about something that's a really beautiful, deep part of practice. And the word for mindfulness in Sanskrit or Pali is sati sampajanya. The first part of the word means mindful awareness, just noticing what's happening. And sampajanya means mindful response, so that it gets confused with other teachings. There's, Buddhism is very big. There's all kinds of teachings of passivity or profound detachment from the world. I don't think anybody at Inside LA, and certainly not me, is recommending that. And it's not actually a very healthy way to live. But what is possible is to quiet the mind and tend the heart so that you can pay attention. That's the first part of mindful, loving awareness. And then you make a wise response. And sometimes it means standing up for justice or when someone's mistreated or mistreating you. You don't have to do it out of hatred, but you can do it out of real deep compassion for yourself and everybody. And that's a really different power and a deep and great power. So in some way, you're invited to inhabit a bigger power than our culture attributes to you. How does this sound?
yeah, I love that. And what I'm hearing is it's more about the process and the way we approach the various tasks and challenges in our life and our internal states, the energy with which we approach it, as opposed to the content or the specifics of our action.
So my dear friend Wes Nisker went to visit Gary Snyder a couple of years ago. Wes died last year. Gary's in his 90s, and he was one of the great environmentalists of the last century. He got the Pulitzer Prize writing Earth Household. So for 50, 60 years, he's been an environmentalist. And when he was asked by Wes, the oceans are rising, the animals are fleeing and dying, refugees are, rising in numbers, all the things you see in the environment. What advice do you have for us? And he said, don't feel guilty. If you're going to save it, don't save it out of guilt or anger or fear. Save it because you love it. Save it because it matters. Because love is the power that mothers pick cars off their children. So it's not that one withdraws, but that there's a whole other way of being. that has both beauty and inner well-being and a power to it to respond. How does this sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds like grace, grace for self, grace for others, grace for the world. And like again, the way we approach as opposed to the choices we make, the way we make our choices.
Yeah, so close your eyes just for a second and feel the sense of grace in your being, in your heart and body. What's it like?
I sometimes struggle to touch it.
Right now, okay, first you notice struggle. That's fine. Can I touch it? Is it okay? Touch that struggle with kindness and grace. Because it came up, you said it. See if there's something that wants to be felt along with the struggle. Yes? What do you feel?
Yeah, in moments I can sense the struggle being the surface of the wave and sense something deeper and sense my thoughts as the surface and there being a deeper presence.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, and
Thank you for this question and for being willing to do it.
thank you very much.
Yeah. Grace, responding to the world.
And
Yes.
thank you so much, Alexis, for all of your work or facilitating this. And Jack, thank you so much for your talk. I loved the central casting joke. You can take the guy out of LA, but you can't take the LA out of the guy, I guess.
That's it.
Pardon?
Yes, that's right.
But I really appreciated what you said about kind of defensiveness and the anger comes up because we care. But I also read a lot of Black feminist authors, and I truly believe that action is important for change. And especially since, in my point of view, suffering, at least in our society today as it stands, is not meted out equally, right? Like, yes, there's
Yes,
suffering,
yes,
but my friends who are undocumented or trans or et cetera, the risk to their lives
yes,
is real and immediate. And am I absolving myself when I just, when I say, yeah, but they're suffering all of life. Like, I guess I come from a very privileged perspective. And so I've had a pretty easy life. And so I think sometimes when I get upset or get concerned about things that are going on, you know, I'm at the end of the day, it's not really going to affect me, right? Um, but also knowing that it takes people power to make change, I just don't. I have a hard time reconciling those two. It's like, okay, you can't do anything.
close your eyes, because part of what I hear, beside the need to reconcile these, and again, mindfulness has these two parts of mindful presence. So they become steady and loving and caring, and then mindful response. I also hear possibly maybe it's guilt or some discomfort in being in a position of privilege, and at the same time knowing today that there are people being mistreated in large numbers in this country and around the world from patriarchy and racism and caste and policies, terrible things. And it's not theoretical. These are children, mothers, fathers. And so I hear you feeling for them and actually wanting to care and wanting to make a difference. And in a sense, you're saying we also need to organize, or we need to respond in a strong way. And what I'm feeling now, let me ask you, if you tune in, is that you have both of these, like you breathe in and breathe out. See if you can sense what it's like to let your heart be quiet and your mind be loving and kind and peaceful. And then notice the urge and the intention, like the in and out breath, that when you get up, you want to carry this and really make a difference. You have this energy to really make a difference and not deny the suffering. To see it, to quiet yourself, and then to be an ambassador of compassion, a bodhisattva. If you were this, what would you be called to do? You can't do everything, but you're called to do something. What would it be? You can know. And if you're comfortable, say it out loud. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much. I feel fight. Fight is what is coming up for me.
What would you, okay, you could get in the ring with Mike Tyson. What does that mean?
I guess, and to lean on what you taught tonight, fight doesn't necessarily have to mean I'm going out with the intention to harm anybody, but more so that fight for me means I'm going to stand up and use what I have to protect people who have less. I'm not going to back down from that. I'm going to always stand up.
So feel that. I want to stand up. I'm going to stand up for justice no matter what, and feel your lineage. You have Sojourner Truth, and you have Harriet Tubman, and you have Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and all these people who were not afraid to stand up, right? But they also didn't do it with hatred or anger. They did it, as you say, with the power of standing up for justice. Feel that in yourself. And what are you called to do next?
That's a great question. And the first thing that comes to mind is people in my community.
All right.
Ease the burden of
You
people in
feel
my
that this is the first thing that people ask tonight. How do you build community? And you build it by reaching out, by going out to people, by connecting, by listening with the bodhisattva heart and say, how can I stand with you? And I hear that in you, and it's powerful. So thank you for carrying that out into the world.
Thank you.
These are kind of the same questions, and like looking through the crystal, slightly different variations. How do I make a difference from a place of deep care and wisdom? How do I make a difference and not turn away? And that is the bodhisattva path. And you can feel it. If you are the bodhisattva of Santa Monica, we'll take that as a geographic point for the moment. And you're called to bring your good heart and your courage and your fearlessness, because that's part of the bodhisattva training, to learn how to stand up without all that. And you will have fear and confusion, but somehow to feel that you're connected with something so much bigger, as if you were blessed by the Buddhas and the shamans and the elders and those who've stood up for so many thousands of generations to say, oh, you too, you're one of us now. So you come to Inside LA and you meditate, you learn how to not be so caught in all the stories and fears and anger and grief and guilt, all those things. and angst. You can honor them, but you remember that you're somewhat bigger than that you're the wise one, the courageous one. And then you find your place. One more person. Want to raise your hand? This kind of conundrum, how do I be a human being with a compassionate and wise heart in really hard times? Well, you have to not be afraid to suffer, because you're suffering anyway. Make use of it. You're the bodhisattva who says, yes, I will feel this. I will hold it all in compassion, and I'll find my place and way to respond. Steady and clear. One more person.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. I'm sorry I forgot to change that. Thank you, Jack, for being here. I have a question that's kind of related to this, but also on your subject of forgiveness. And I'm just wondering how to process through. I've got a 24-year-old daughter, and we're in one day it's really good, and one day it's really bad. And I think I'm doing okay. We won't talk for a couple of months. And we see each other. I have the joy back in my heart. My best friend is back in my life. And then the following week we're talking and I say something wrong or I don't use the right pronoun and I'm ghosted again. And then I get depleted. I'm rebounding better. But I'm just trying to figure out how to ride that wave or come to acceptance where I just don't get hit so hard. And when we're together, I don't get hit so and things are going well. I'm not like on this pink cloud. I'm not at the top of a mountain. I'm just happy to be with her. But it's the falling down that can be so hard on me, and just how to try to regulate that within myself a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I invite you to close your eyes too, because the depth of connection between a parent and their child, between a mother and her daughter, is so profound. And if you feel inside, when you ask about forgiveness, what's the primary emotion that you feel in this?
When I'm asking for forgiveness from her or for myself?
Well, what are you feeling in yourself when you tell this story? My daughter ghosts me. I don't know how to do this. What does it feel like inside you?
Well, I've moved because this is been going on for a couple of years. I've moved from blaming myself so much to her being in 24 and trying to grow up and trying to figure out herself.
So you moved to really shift the story that you tell. Drop into your body. Where do you carry this dilemma with your daughter, ghosting and separation? Where do you carry it in your body? What do you notice?
I carry a heaviness.
And where is that? Is it in your...
It's like I'm carrying a lead weight.
Where in your body is that lead weight to be felt?
It's like carrying a ball and chain.
Yeah. Is it around your ankle? Is it your heart?
It's around so I'm dragging this weight.
So
it's
you
heavy.
Feel like you're being pulled and weighted down. How much does it hurt?
It used to physically hurt a lot. It really did. It was the depression.
And now, does it still hurt some?
It still hurts some, but it's not as bad. It's not, because I think I've reached out enough and And I have quite a few friends with daughters that
Sure.
they
Okay.
reassure me that it's going to pass.
Okay. So keep your eyes closed. I want you to feel the weight and that it hurt a lot before, and now it hurts some, but not as much. And as you feel it, notice how you relate to it. Do you want to try and get rid of it? Is it terrible? And notice what happens if you wrap that pain of it, because it's very painful, with compassion. You hold your body and the ball and chain and the heaviness and all the suffering. And you just hold yourself with compassion. And notice what would happen or what does happen if you bring that kindness to it. Is it okay? Can it receive it? What
I
do you
hear
know?
myself saying, I guess so.
I guess so.
I
So
can carry all kinds of compassion for her, you know?
you said, I guess so. You could have compassion for her. It's good to start with yourself.
I know I don't feel compassionate for myself, but that's more the I guess so. Yeah, okay, I guess so.
Okay, so try this. I don't feel compassion for myself. Now, if you were to meet, there are a lot of mothers who have lost contact or connection with their daughters,
Mhm,
thousands, maybe
mhm.
more. If you were to meet a mother who said, oh, it's been so painful holding her heart, her body. She said, oh, it's so painful. What would you say to her?
Oh my God, it just makes me cry just even saying that, Jack, because I do feel so much compassion. I do understand.
Yes, all right. So now that is she's turning back to you. I want you to put your hand on your heart and realize that you can hold all this with compassion. It's really hard. It's just a very, very painful thing. And then feel that you're not alone, that there are a huge circle of mothers who also suffered like this, and that you need this compassion. And whatever you do with your daughter, the more you can be compassionate to yourself and her, the better it will be. And I hear you realizing, she has to have her time and find her way. Feel the kindness to yourself. And then from this, you can gaze at your daughter in all her suffering and pulling back and running away and doing what she did with eyes of kindness, because she suffers too.
Mm-hmm.
And then your compassion gets bigger. It holds you and it holds her. And it's not something to fix, but to become the great heart of kindness. How are you doing?
I I feel pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that, but I still feel like I walk on eggshells with her, and
You know what? You will.
yeah,
This is how it is for now. It's delicate for you. It's painful. And you can't fix it. You
no,
can't do it right. You can't fix it. But you can hold the whole situation in kindness. You're not doing it wrong. It's just how it is. And you hold yourself and your daughter and this that you're going through for a while in kindness. No blame, no fixing, no trying to make it different, because that's all making it worse. Just kindness.
thank you.
So thank you, dear. That was both vulnerable and important for everyone to hear and learn from. And, even that way you have helped teach us all.
Thank you.
So Krishna Das, my dear friend and chanter of wonderful chants, has a chant that Roshi Bernie Glassman, Zen master, gave him to put to music. It is a Zen chant for the path of the bodhisattva. And I wish I could sing it to you, but I'm not that good a singer. But it goes to these verses. This is sort of how we'll end. Calling out to hungry hearts everywhere through endless time, you who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this Bodhi mind. Calling all you hungry spirits everywhere through endless time, calling out to hungry hearts, all the lost and the left behind. Gather round and share this meal, your joy and your sorrows. I make it mine. And so what we practiced tonight and talked about in dialogue was the first part of mindfulness, of resting in mindful, loving awareness and bringing a kindness and an openness to body, heart, and mind, and becoming the loving consciousness itself. And then breathing out with mindful response from this place as the bodhisattva to say, here I am on this earth. Let me awaken the great heart of compassion in myself. And let me tend to those around me and what I can touch with a spirit of love and joy and courage. You become the healing of the earth from your very simple meditation practice. It goes with you as you stand up and move through the world. And this is what the world asks of us: to not be afraid of what we feel, to not be afraid of the suffering, and change, and to feel that who we are, our Buddha nature. Thank you. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you for supporting Inside LA and being part of it.